Hey, it's the Nerdy Sports Fan, and this is a bit of a unique one for me. So, since so many of the Rams faithful have commented very specifically on disliking my take on Van Jefferson, when I said that he could improve his route running, um, I meant it, but I thought there were enough of you to comment about it, and I had looked through so many different players that it's at least possible that maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was confusing him for one of the other players on the team, like Swain. Um, Maybe I had just entirely brain farted on the guy's film. So I went through another few games of tape, every single play that Jefferson was involved in, different games than the ones that I had previously evaluated. I also want to preface this, I do not watch highlight reels. Absolutely refuse. Highlight reels only show the good, and they don't allow you to see whether or not the player has a baseline of consistency or not. So it makes no sense to me. And if somebody says this is this player's absolute best game, if it's not the championship game or an extremely, extremely important playoff game, I actually intentionally avoid those. I also avoid players' absolute worst games. I try to look at the meat and potatoes to see what you're getting out of the player week in and week out. And I also attempt to evaluate playoff and bowl game performances, and anything that's really, really big and important. I don't attempt to watch combine workout film. I'll just look at the numbers for it, and I usually don't necessarily watch the Senior Bowl. They're already in the process at that point. They're coached up on specifically what people are looking for. So I attempt to see what these guys are doing prior to them getting that sort of coaching from an agent or the professional scouts and coaches that are present at the Senior Bowl. So I'm intentionally avoiding the holes and pitfalls that the scouting community can typically fall into. You can get the blinders on when you're looking at highlight reels, when you're looking at just their best games, when you're looking at Senior Bowl performances and things of that nature. You need to get a full picture of somebody. That being said, my comments on Van Jefferson needing to improve his route running, I stand by. Because, again, I'm watching a few games worth of film on everybody, and I went back and I watched a few more games worth of film on him, and I actually am way, way more firmly cemented in my comments than ever. And I'll give you specific reasons why. Van Jefferson is a very good college route runner. I preface that because there is a strong difference in what you need to do in the college ranks and in the pro ranks. It's one of the reasons that the wide receiver position, generally speaking, has the highest bust rate in the entire league, because there is a steep learning curve between college and pro. There are very different things that are going to break you open at the college level than at the pro level. There's, generally speaking, far fewer routes run in college offenses than pro offenses. And the Florida offense is no exception to this. It is an extremely, extremely good college offense, including regular running from the quarterback to mix things up and keep defenses honest. Lots of deep balls. And you have to take into account the overall talent of the receiving core, making it so any one particular player is not going to get jammed up with bracket coverage. You have multiple draft picks out of this offense, and you usually have multiple draft picks out of this offense. So you're not going to get that bracketed, bumping at the line and then safety over the top, just wiping you out entirely. When you look at Van Jefferson's film, he's more often than not playing outside. And when he is playing in the slot area, his route tree is maybe 3 to 4 different, very specific routes that are run pretty consistently. They're not shaking things up on a ridiculous level. And when he was playing outside, on the line, when he's faced with any sort of press coverage, he stutter steps way too long. And what's worse than the stutter stepping way too long, it's extremely, extremely consistent. Having watched a couple of games of film prior on Van Jefferson, now watching a couple of games, different games, I was actually able to call which direction he was going to break trying to make his release based off of the number of steps he took on the stutter step. If you want to, I understand that not everybody cares to diagnose film, but go into it. Look at yourself. See if I'm lying. He is extremely, extremely consistent. So being able to disguise your release is going to be a problem for him at the pro level. If you look at extremely good route runners at the pro level, my favorite example of this is also a recent trade to my favorite team, Stephon Diggs. He breaks down into two-way release possibility very quickly, and he doesn't screw around with the stutter steps in all sorts of different directions before he makes a release. It's break it down into two-way release, maybe one, head fake or something of that nature, and then dip out and release. He's just trying to avoid getting both hands on him, and that's all you need to do. If you have very good top end speed, which Van Jefferson absolutely does have, once you break down to two-way release and stop the corner's momentum, that's all you need to do. Then you just start accelerating in one direction or another, and you can use your speed to effectively break down that press coverage. You may have to do a swim or something of that nature on some of the better corners, but you don't need all those stutter steps. And in fact, they are a hindrance, because at the top of Van Jefferson's routes, a number of times you see the same pattern. At the top of the route, instead of what's traditionally coached, which is drop the hips, stop your momentum by dropping your hips and shortening your steps, and the moment you've stopped your momentum enough to not fall, plant and cut on your break. You don't need the stutter steps. And Van Jefferson applies those at the top of his route as frequently as he applies it in trying to release from press coverage. So he is an intensely effective college route runner. Not in the way that Jerry Jeudy is. Jerry Jeudy is run in pro-style routes. He has a larger route combination tree that he runs, and when he applies his skills to those routes, you don't see the bad habits that you see with Van Jefferson. You don't see the things that you have to unlearn. So my reasoning on saying Van Jefferson needs to work on his route running is not that he is an ineffective college route runner. Absolutely not the case. He does break open frequently. It's because he's extremely physically gifted, and the offensive coordinator, the coach, whoever's calling the plays for that offense, knows how to use route combinations in order to scheme somebody open. And frequently, you would see them use go routes until press coverage was no longer used. And then they would just do little bubble screens, quick hitters on the outside when the corner is 10 yards off the guy. It's fantastic. It works. But that's scheme opening him up. That's not his talents opening him up. So when you're just relying on his individual talents to open him up, I see things that are effective, absolutely. But I also see that at the pro level, he is going to have to forget those things and learn an entirely new skill set in order to be as effective at breaking open. Now, other receivers that run a limited route tree, and what I'm saying limited, I'm saying probably half the route combinations and no route combinations depending on the receiver and the quarterback both seeing the same schematic play in the defense. So that's the difference between college and pro typically. And you do still see that with Van Jefferson's offense. He's not running routes where he has to read the safety of the corner and maybe a linebacker and change the route at the break point. So he will have to learn that, like every other receiver entering the league will have to learn. But beyond that, he's going to have to unlearn what he does currently to break open, which is another step added over and above what other receivers learn coming into the NFL. So if he wants to be an average route runner in the NFL, he will just have to continue doing what he's doing. Most NFL receivers are not effective route runners. So there's that. But if he wants to be an elite level route runner, which people always have the potential to learn, and Jerry Jeudy is head and shoulders above the field in this area, he is going to have to, stop doing what he's doing and invest in himself outside of the coaching he's getting from his position coaches or his offensive coordinator or his head coach, and get with a private coach to teach very specific ways to shorten his motions at both the release point and the top of his break. So I hope this placates some of you. I made this specifically because Rams fans don't typically hit my radar as just the whiny fan bases because their team's generally bad, and the draft is all about hope salesmen, and if you start to really step on people's hope, they get all sorts of personally hurt and feel attacked, and then they lash out. No. Rams fans, you've got a recent Super Bowl visit. You've got a relatively recent Super Bowl championship. Most Rams fans are not like that. So I may be making these as well for some of the other fan bases, but let me know what you think. Let me know if this helps you understand why I don't necessarily specifically like Van Jefferson's route running, like everybody else seems to be coozing over. Like and subscribe if you enjoy the content, and hit up my other videos so you know what I feel about the other players around the league recently drafted. I'm going to have top 5 and bottom 5 grades going out for the draft. We're going to start total off-season grades in the coming weeks, and there will be another video coming up about likely cut downs, veteran cuts that should be added to specific teams once they find their way to free agency. Thanks for watching.